everyone, it's Jessica, and welcome to the newest episode of Jessica Talks Veganism. In this episode, we will be Today's podcast is why foods cannot be vegan and my dislike to online nutrition advice. So let's get to it. In this episode, I will discuss why I dislike online nutrition advice, specifically pertaining to large platform users, and why foods cannot be quote-unquote vegan, per se. So stick around for research-backed nutritional advice, RDN certified, of course, with sources in the description, and how you can sustainably live a more healthy and varied lifestyle, or a lifestyle rich in variation. So this is going to be all cruelty-free, by the way, so a nice perk. So let's get into some objectives for today's episode. So the first thing we're going to go into is the dangers of diet and wellness culture. It's disguised. All about intuitive eating, how we can unlearn harmful habits, responsibilities that come with having or hosting a larger platform, and impressionable audiences. All about diets, why I dislike the overused statistic, why foods cannot be vegan, repairing your relationship with food above all else, and conclusions with the Anita helpline and my outro. So let's get to it. So the first thing we're going to discuss is the dangers of diet and wellness culture. So diet culture is harmful to all bodies, large, small, and diet culture feeds into a culture of body distrust, body shame, fuels fat phobia, discrimination, and can lead to disordered eating habits. So diet culture often feeds into a societal a notion of a perfect or beach body. And I'm going to discuss the unrealisticness of this pursuit. So before I delve more into this, girls are no more likely to struggle with eating disorders than guys or boys. So this notion is really perpetuated by society or the media. So diet culture is really harmful to everybody, and nobody is immune. This is very similar to ageism and discrimination in animal activism, with the discrimination against younger and older activists. So there's no ground to it. So diet culture can also lead to a loss of touch with your body in the sense of hunger cues, and this fuels the idea of body distrust, counting our calories, counting every macro of every gram you eat, and weighing our food. This has never been a way of life, and it should not be. And if this sounds like your current reality, just know that there is hope, and there is a universality to these behaviors. There has always been an experience that somebody can associate with diet culture. It's a norm. It's ingrained in our society. I've had experiences with diet culture, and I'm kind of here to tell you that, it gets better. And veganism, for me personally, has not been a scapegoat for a disordered eating habit or veganism or eating disorder, because I use it as a means for substitution rather than restriction. I think that sets apart a lot of vegan influencers that spew inaccurate, dangerous information to impressionable audiences. So that's something to keep in mind. And that's why, as I said before, I have a problem with vegan influencers actively endangering the lives of many younger people on these platforms. So next, let's talk all about intuitive eating. So there's an essential question that comes with this, and it's really, so Jessica, so what should we be eating? What does a healthy diet look like? So as teenagers and adults, we are growing on the daily. We need energy. So where does this energy come from? Calories, macros, whatnot. So we learn new things to carry with us, and we learn a plethora of knowledge, which we need to fuel our everyday activities. So I promote a sustainable approach to food that's also somewhat constructive. And it takes time, honestly. It's called intuitive eating. So intuitive eating is how we would eat if we're not necessarily influenced by diet culture per se. So intuitive eating essentially means eating until you're full, choosing foods that make you feel good, and stopping when you're full. So you may be thinking, Jessica, what if my body only craves Oreos? Oreos, aren't they vegan? So is this intuitive eating? I don't think I could do it. Let me tell you something. So that was me too initially. And if you give yourself access, unwarranted access, all the time to your favorite foods, your body over time will develop a liking to foods that make you feel good. And this doesn't mean necessarily choosing salads all the time. I don't eat salads all the time. That sounds miserable. So choosing foods in moderation, essentially, that comes a little bit later in intuitive eating. In the beginning, it can feel a little uncertain. And, we need to escape these feelings of discomfort to truly overcome the disastrousness of diet culture or ingrainedness, to unlearn those pre-taught notions. So Essentially, let's get into it. So, you may be feeling at the beginning, as I said before, of your journey, you're violating moderation. But if you continue, the journey of health should not feel like a sprint. It's really a marathon, essentially. And if you keep going at it and reinforcing healthy habits, fueling your body enough, and getting a little bit of activity every day, you can truly feel your best. And it comes with a little share of joy. So, next we have how we can unlearn harmful habits. So, my tip is to fulfill that craving or essentially live guilt free. And I don't mean guilt free like those cookies that are diet culture cookies. Let's be honest. I don't like the idea of putting guilt free over something or whatnot because you should not feel guilty for fueling your body as it asks you. And it's a core principle of intuitive eating. So I wrote this in my article about feeling the need to track or compensate after having a fun food. And after getting into intuitive eating and adopting this new mindset, I no longer feel the need to compensate, overcompensate with exercise or whatnot. I feel enough. Like I feel like I don't need to exercise to burn off something that I may have ate, and I'm finally at a very good point, and I don't need to exercise and overdo it anymore, I guess. So this idea is perpetuated by diet culture, of course, and there's this ridiculous French diet rule, which is essentially a highway to disordered eating habits or an eating disorder. And essentially, it's having like 5 bites to truly absorb the flavor or whatnot, and then just putting it down. I think that sounds like a terrible way to live, let's be honest. So my tip for you is to unlearn these harmful habits, to trust your body more so, and to live guilt-free and not by a label. Live on your own terms, and, a lot of happiness, joy, excitement, laughter will follow. So trust the process. So the next point we have is my responsibilities that come with a larger platform and impressionable audiences. So I think it is an utmost responsibility of any creator on this platform, YouTube, Spotify, Audible, whatnot, to hold themselves accountable for the words and the actions that they outwardly project. So I've been disappointed on this platform of the immaturity expressed by a lot of different content creators, spilling inaccurate and dangerous information to any younger audience or person demographic that they can reach. So, and this often comes at the pursuit of another paycheck. And I don't see the point of chasing a paycheck, chasing a financial motive. The point of a platform is to spread information that means a lot to you. And enough so that you are going to put yourself in the cause. You're going to edit the videos and you're going to put out something that means the world to you. And that's what veganism means to me. I want to make sure that even if this doesn't get to anybody in particular, if I can help one person maybe transition to veganism, learn that you don't need to follow the diet culture norms of society and to break free of the dieting restrictive mindset, that's my goal. It's not to necessarily influence 1,000 people to go vegan or it would be nice to have a monumental impact upon the world, but I'm really aiming for one goal at a time. And if I impact one person, then my time is all the more worth it. So next I also wanted to talk a little bit about the jumping to diet, especially with content creators, and this idea of weight cycling. So weight cycling, it happens a lot, and it's a symptom of disordered eating. So that's like where people go on periods of eating more, eating less, and it's usually due to restriction and binge cycles. And to break the cycle, you can practice intuitive eating, but I do recommend if you're transitioning out of disordered eating or an eating disorder to read my article, The Correlation Between EDS and Veganism, and to take a little bit of time to repair your relationship with food before making any major assessments in your dietary patterns. Because at the beginning, if you are transitioning from one of these paths of disordered eating, restrictive eating, it can feel like a form of restriction when it should feel like substitution. So that's my 2 cents. And I want to talk about this one experience I had. So I remember with content creators, and specifically why I was very disappointed with online nutrition platforms was because BuzzFeed, for a younger demographic when I was younger, they had this shake promotion and they encouraged it for health, weight loss, whatnot, immunity boost. And I decided to try it. And when I initially failed the diet, which I was bound to fail, realistically, and I felt like I had no self-control. And diet culture made me feel like I was the problem. It really wasn't. Diet culture was the problem. So This is why I take an utmost responsibility in the content that I post. The sources I use, the evidence in favor to protect maybe a girl that's unsure or a boy behind the screen. So these feelings are universal. It happens to us all. And I just want to let you know that you're not alone. Your feelings are valid, and you are not the problem. Diet culture is. And next we have all about diets and why I dislike the overuse statistic. So this is very interesting. I want to overlay this section with an ever so controversial, yet isolating and invalidating the feelings of many people. So essentially, if weight loss is practiced in a sustainable manner via a moderate caloric deficit. So a moderate caloric deficit means that from your maintenance calories, so however many calories it takes to maintain your weight with your activity, whatnot, subtracting if weight loss is something that's going to make you feel healthier, help you out, and it's all about seeking health. Some people are, health comes in different sizes, and I'm going to discuss a little bit the set point theory and my thoughts on that. And I think people can be healthy in larger and smaller bodies, and medium bodies too. I think there's no question to it, honestly. But if somebody feels that weight loss is something that they are interested in and they think it'll improve their health, then I absolutely encourage it. And I think a moderate caloric deficit is finding your baseline needs and subtracting a small amount, which is a moderate amount is there was a statistic that I will put the citation for below. And a small is considered 10 to 15% below maintenance. Moderate is considered 20 to 25% below maintenance. And large is anything bigger than 25% lower than maintenance calories. So it's really a percentage because some people have higher or lower. And for example, a 500 calorie deficit, which is somewhat big, I guess, if for somebody eating a typical 1,500 calorie diet can mean a lot. That's it's a big portion of their daily calories versus somebody that may be eating somewhere around 2,500. So it's very interesting. So I feel like that's very important to talk about. And the next thing I want to talk about is why foods cannot be vegan. So this one is pretty quick, but it's also very controversial. So veganism refers specifically to a lifestyle and not a diet. It's not entirely a dietary thing. You practice it in every way that you carry on your life. It's a philosophy on the treatment of animals. So essentially, this is why a product cannot inherently embody all these qualities. And to carry the message of veganism, I like to call products plant-based. I think that's a pretty fair term. I mean, I don't necessarily like the term plant-based because it's mostly used so that people detract by carnivores that utilize the term in a way to describe veganism as a radical idea. It makes sense in that way, but I have no problem and encourage people to describe foods as plant-based. I think that's the most effective way we can use it. So essentially, I wanted to talk about healthy bodies, essentially, as I said before. So a healthy body can be, but is not limited to what you see on the cover of a magazine. There's something called a set point theory. A set point theory is essentially our bodies under a certain set individual weight for us will maintain it with minimal effort. This weight is achieved through healthy but sustainable lifestyle habits. This is why doctors, dietitians, nutritionists preach lifestyle habits over diets. So don't get me wrong, a set point is a healthy medium for us own, but that means health is applicable in larger, smaller, and medium bodies. Health isn't a size, but proper nourishment and activity. So I want to talk about something I found very upsetting. So there's this term the statistic that's being thrown around a lot in eating recovery communities. 95% of diets fail and most people regain weight loss. Analyzing this statistic can make people feel outwardly seeking weight loss for improved health feel isolated. Like their efforts for them are personally worthwhile and negligent. And negligible, my bad. And this often is used, as I said before, by the eating disorder recovery community. And this is what makes me upset. Understanding that recovery for some people, whether this pertains to eating disorder specifically, is not just anorexia or bulimia nervosa, is beyond many people. So that is why we need to spread more awareness on otherwise socially unacceptable eating disorders. So these movements are really driven on an idea of inclusivity. Meanwhile, they isolate and invalidate people. So next I wanted to talk a little bit about repairing your relationship with food. So if you're looking to go vegan, I would say start at my blog. I have a lot of resources, and I documented from the beginning of my vegan journey how it was for me, my experiences, and I offer tips and pieces of advice for beginning a vegan lifestyle. I think before you go vegan, as I once did, repair your relationship with food first, above all else, as I said before. Before you go vegan, make sure you understand that the lifestyle is a lot more than cutting out meat, dairy, whatnot, and animal derived products. So if the transition, if it wasn't, if it was just a diet per se, pertaining to diet culture, it wouldn't make sense why there's transition foods that are vegan. And it wouldn't make sense why I am standing here today preaching substitution over restriction. So it extends beyond a dietary means. So essentially, if you struggle with disordered eating or an eating disorder, just know that there is hope for the future and you can recover. And I would recommend reading my article linked below before considering veganism. And I promise it will answer all your questions when it comes to veganism, starting, when to go, and a little bit of my tips. And it really comes from a place of experience. So I would recommend for my closing, I would like to put out a Anita hotline. I know that this episode can be a little bit more out there for people that may be struggling with eating disorders or disordered eating. And I want to provide a safe space where people can feel comfortable sharing their ideas, and also a place where people can outwardly feel, okay, I feel like I need help. And that's something that's okay and very valid to express. So the NETA hotline is 1-800-931-2237. And it's all confidential, so don't worry about it. And if you're struggling with something like that, I wish you the best in your recovery. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode today. It's one of my shorter episodes, but I appreciate your time and have a great day. Bye-bye.